Noir Navio, Clara's quarters. Clara watched as her brother, the prince, crossed his arms, absorbing the information she'd shared with him. Even through the enhanced reality reflection of his visage, she noticed the slightly marked furrow he was making, the tapping of his left index finger against his upper arm, and the telltale focus in his eyes that had become a far too familiar sight. She remained silent, waiting to hear her brother's response. It didn't take long for it to come. Lukac suspected that there could be more traitors hiding somewhere in plain sight. Of this I'm certain. Spies, secret agents, and mere opportunistic scoundrels waiting for the perfect moment to strike or open their mouths for the right price, said the prince in a focused, unshakable tone. But this? The possibility of a highly skilled unknown agent with knowledge and means moving, scurrying, and slithering outside our records, estimations, and expectations. My sister, dearest, even with you being the one who says so, it is hard to believe that such a possibility could be true. And yet, brother dearest, I speak not that this is factual in its totality. It is merely the most educated guess that could be provided to me at the time, Clara replied in a similar but gentler tone. Can we trust the intuition of a Yakanti, no matter how exceptional he may be? He asked, eyes focused on his sister's. Clara smiled openly. Whereas Wyatt is sincere and honest in almost everything he says and does, Jincho is simply unfiltered. He does not need to hold his tongue. Truly, I believe he is simply unable to contain himself, even to his detriment. It is an enviable trait under the right circumstances. Her smile dropped, returning to her colder, focused expression. Yes, we can trust in his intuition. He may be wrong. I pray to any deities that may exist that is the case, but if he is correct to any extent... The prince nodded grimly. More strings are moving than we initially feared. Suppose there truly is an Arabian agent, loyal, traitor, or independent. In that case, it matters not. Set loose and working to favor our uncle or simply to cause mayhem and disharmony, then I must always remain alert. We don't know the capabilities of this theoretical agent. Ignoring this plausible threat would be unwise. Now you understand the fear which grips my heart and refuses to let go, brother dearest. Please take precautions and safeguard your life. Were you to fall, then our uncle's victory would be all but assured, Clara pleaded, unafraid to show her worry. The prince smiled, uncrossing his arms and leaning forward, resting his arms on his lap. If I die, Alexander and Giovanni are still out there. It worries me that we've yet to know anything regarding their whereabouts. I can only hope that they are safe within the concealing embrace of a neutral house, he declared in a longing, almost hollow tone, followed by a dark chuckle. Perhaps I should take precautions and ensure that, if demise is to claim my life, the totem won't crumble from the top. Clara joined in with a dark, dismissing chuckle of her own. Her hands trembled slightly, her heart pumped wildly in her chest, and that familiar, awful, revolting sensation manifested from her deepest, most reclusive part of her soul, threatening, laughing, and caressing her with sweet yet empty promises. She knew better than to entertain those thoughts. Brother, I beg of you, do not jest with such a thing. The Astor siblings locked gazes for several cold moments before the oldest exhaled through his nose. I'm terribly sorry, Clara, but I will take precautions. Cornelius mustn't be allowed to achieve his victory. He wishes to bring prosperity and strength to the principality, but what lies behind those excuses? What is his true goal? He shook his head, eyes focused, unblinking. Will you do it, Clara? If I were to die? Clara closed her eyes, managing to lock the monster in its cage once more. Opening them a moment later, she nodded once. I will, but only if your life is to be forfeited, my brother dearest. The totem will remain standing. I can promise you that much. I'm so terribly sorry for mounting such a monumental weight upon your shoulders, Clara. You, above even Alexander, I trust above all, the prince proclaimed, regret and relief evident in his posture and voice. Let us move past such morbid, distant possibilities. I've debated with myself about contacting you regarding a certain gift I've sent. His lips curled into a playful smirk, stirring Clara's curiosity and interest. If I must be honest, I was waiting for your call to commence with screaming and demands for an explanation. It seems fate has decided to rob me of a moment of retribution, he chuckled, shrugging, further drawing upon the blonde princess's inquisitive nature. Being cryptic does not fit you, brother dearest. Nevertheless, I am intrigued. May I know what this gift is? Or will you be so cruel as to wound me by presenting me with a shiny rock, only to take it away?" Clara pressed on, only partially in jest, trying to hide her mounting interest as she was unable to read her brother's intentions. The prince's expression was now dripping with smugness, causing his sister to narrow her eyes impatiently. "I've sent the 2 corvettes captured on Hastrung back under your command. They operate under no names, for I've decided to grant you the chance to give them a fitting name on your own, Clara." The princess's eyes widened for a moment before her head tilted ever so slightly. "Brother dearest, you shouldn't have. I sent those ships along the Gallant Venture for experimentation, deconstruction, and reverse engineering projects back on Matcha. The Gallant Venture is no more. Finnegan technicians, scientists, engineers, and more were quick to dismantle it, eager to learn its secrets. Regardless, your worry is understandable but unnecessary. Although rare, black ships have been recovered through boarding actions or disabled husks captured and towed back. There have been no all-out battles yet, only skirmishes and minor incursions. My officers are aware of the risks and the value of these ships. We have more than enough to conduct examinations," the prince revealed. "Very well, brother dearest. I shall receive your gift with applause and measured eagerness. Will you tell me what it is I can expect?" she asked with a pleasant smile on her lips. Certainly. Both ships received minor retrofits. Heeding Lukács and Juliana's counsel, the first ship was enhanced with sensor arrays and cyber warfare capabilities. Furthermore, it will be able to provide additional medical and logistical support. For such purposes, its fighter complement has been reduced to only 10 and replaced by drone-piloted Raptor fighters. In exchange, extra shuttles and probes have been loaded onto it. Your head officers will retain their positions, and their functions will simply expand in their respective fields. As I can't spare any more, illustrious personnel, my sister, the commanding officer of each ship, will fly under the care and direction of a lieutenant commodore," said the violet-eyed man. Clara nodded. "And the second?" "Its retrofits are less significant as the major changes come in the form of the personnel and purpose. Despite its limited hangar space, it is now able to hold 2 wedges, bringing your total fighters to 120. This came at the cost of reducing its shuttle capacity to only 1. However, it now also has hot drop pods and 24 ROSF elements alongside substantial marine and auxilia elements and heavier-grade weaponry," explained the prince. Clara smiled widely. "Juliana?" Her brother nodded once, sharing her mirth. "Splendid. Be certain to convey my thanks to her and to Lukács. It seems that you've uncovered a notable, talented man, too, brother dearest. Who commands the ships?" "The commanding officer of the first ship is Tallulah Finnegan, one of Amelia's nieces. She's a flexible woman with a sharp mind, with a fondness for pushing the limits of what's acceptable under the rules of engagement," the prince revealed. Clara raised an eyebrow. "I'm surprised Amelia didn't push for someone more experienced or right under her thumb to act as her spy." The prince hummed. Tallulah was a reasonable compromise. Amelia's eager to prove the value of her house at large without overstepping or overplaying her cards. She's a careful thinker, a trait I can respect, he chuckled to himself. Redford will retain overall control of your new fleet. Of course, with you at its head. Congratulations, Admiral Clara Astor, joked the prince. Mock me all you want. It will not wound me, Clara countered. Truly, terrific news. For the commanding officer of the second ship is Donato Lintar, the blond man confessed. Clara was unable and unwilling to hide her discomfort. Lintar? Please, brother dearest, tell me that this Donato isn't an insufferable ass the likes of George. I doubt my mind could endure the stress of having to contain a matching ego and conceited personality. Believe it or not, Donato is one of the most approachable and unprejudiced members of House Lintar. He is also Gerard and Gregor's grandnephew, and they do not see eye to eye in most matters. He sighed tiredly. Already there are factions within my advisors and officers. It is no surprise that George is at the head of the most traditional-minded faction. Hopefully this will diminish George's protests and demonstrate to Gerard that the loyalty of his house is appreciated and rewarded. Is that dullard hoping his house replaces one of our vassal houses? Clara asked tiredly. Gerard is ambitious, if nothing else. Though sister of mine, we must be grateful that he lacks the intelligence to be capable of performing chicanery. Even so, they will be properly rewarded and honored once this conflict ends in our favor, the prince commented. If, replied the blonde princess, A moment later, she smiled. "It was good seeing you again, brother dearest." "Stay safe." Her brother nodded as the connection ended a moment later. With the QEC returning to its hidden compartment, the princess released a repressed sigh before she stood up and moved to her nearby table. Sitting down, she picked up her unfinished knitting project, a cute, chubby frog. She tried to focus on it, but failed miserably, making several mistakes. After undoing her 20th mistake, she groaned in frustration and simply set it down. Her mind was in chaos as ideas, thoughts, and plans flew freely, unopposed. The idea of summoning Wyatt to share a knitting session or simply to have her and Cynthia enjoy his company in tranquility crossed her mind. Perhaps she could now inquire further about his past and family. It was both frustrating and relaxing that Wyatt never felt the need to speak about himself, his achievements, his mistakes, or his family. He was honest yet reserved, and he was rarely inquisitive unless something truly caught his interest or needed clarification about a subject or another. Yet she set that idea aside, discarding it entirely. He was far too busy at the moment, not to mention that he was going to test Jincho's prototype. "Yes, that will have to do," she muttered, enjoying the idea of watching live footage of him doing basic maneuvers and testing the fighter in open space. A few moments later, the door to her quarters opened. Cynthia entered, of course, followed by a concealed Milcades and— "Wyatt?" she asked, confused as to why he was present. The door closed behind them, but Milcades refused to uncloak just yet. She couldn't see him directly, but she could sense and read the unserious emotions the man projected. Something was happening without her knowledge. She stood up as Cynthia, smirking almost evilly, sat on her preferred couch. "Milcades, you can uncloak yourself." "Not yet, Clara," Milcades replied, humor palpable in his voice. "Wyatt here has come up with a most amusing idea. Once I heard it, I was defeated and convinced to help him carry it out. Do you know how hard it is to surprise you?" In response, she crossed her arms, staring at the empty space from which the voice originated. Looking closer, she could barely make out the edge distortion effect of the field surrounding the Royal Marine captain. "I am not amused." "You will be soon," Milcades replied in an annoying sing-song tone. "Wyatt," Clara said, turning to the pilot. "Explain." "You're going to fly a fighter," Wyatt said without hesitation as a smile appeared on his lips. "Not in a simulation. A real Raptor fighter." Clara blinked once, twice, and finally a third time before her mouth partially opened, but refused to form any word. Slowly she turned to Cynthia, her best friend, sister in all but blood, and bodyguard in search of an answer. All she found was a rare, smug, pleased, and satisfied expression on her face. Her lips curled into a nefarious smile while her piercing blue eyes reflected an unfathomable amount of joy. Blushing, realizing she had been somehow cornered and put at the center of her little amusing games, the target of teasing instead of being the instigator, the princess shifted her gaze back to Wyatt's heterochromatic gaze, finally finding her voice. But you can't!" "I can't," she mumbled awkwardly, her mind unable to conjure a coherent thought amidst the chaos inside her. "I can. I did." "You can too," Wyatt replied, crossing his arms at the same time he heard Milcades snickering, thoroughly enjoying himself. Clara took a step back. "I'm a princess, Wyatt." "Cynthia, you awful red demon, what did you do?" "Me?" Cynthia asked far too innocently. "I did nothing. I only told your elite fighter squadron leader that you were feeling stressed. Everything from that point is of his own doing." "And yet you gloat. Milcades, I can feel your merriment as if it were my own." "You white-haired devil, you dare mock your princess so?" Clara protested, her blush intensifying. Yet the captain remained cloaked. "Proper protocol and rules of decorum limit me. I'm a princess. The cockpit of a fighter is not my place." Peering into Wyatt's gaze, she continued. "You already gave me a chance to enjoy myself once, Wyatt. There was secrecy and opportunity." "Then let's do it again, Clara," Wyatt replied, his expression turning serious. "That gilded cage and my own. Let's break those bars open a little more." Clara's blush disappeared, her posture relaxed, but her bewilderment remained. "But Redford would never allow—" "I convinced the old man." "He was far easier to come to an agreement than I thought," Cynthia interjected. "As long as you go out in an unarmed fighter, he will keep it as a secret." Desperately, she switched from looking at Cynthia and Wyatt several times before landing on the black-haired pilot. "I don't have any real experience." "I know you know the basic controls," Wyatt countered. "Saw it when you piloted the shuttle. And with how much you love fighters, do you expect me to believe you haven't memorized the control panels? The princess swallowed hard as a smile threatened to appear on her face. I can't. I'm a princess, and I couldn't possibly degrade myself to do such a thing. A cockpit is not the place for royalty, she said as she felt 3 piercing sets of eyes upon her. That's why you're just going to shadow my movements, Wyatt began. Simulations are good, but nothing is better than real experience. And if you have problems, the onboard computer can engage autopilot whenever you want. He let out a chuckle. Besides, space is vast. The debris fields are gone, and there aren't any enemies left in the system. No one will know that Princess Clara Astor went out to pilot a fighter just to have fun. Defeated and her will tarnished beyond recovery, her smile appeared. I'll put on my armor, she said dryly, almost robotically, as she turned on her heel. But that's the moment when Milcades appeared, presenting a standard pilot armor and gear. Slowly, she turned again, staring at the low-quality equipment. "Ready to fly, Clara?" Milcades asked, with a broad, mischievous grin plastered on his face. Wyatt smiled under his helmet as the now-concealed Clara walked next to him. Her step lacked the fortitude and strength he'd grown accustomed to, but it was a welcome change. It helped remember that even royalty was but human. Above the rest and even above nobles, certainly but human at the end of the day. The plan was simple. To prevent any rumors or suspicions from erupting, Cynthia would remain in Clara's quarters while linked to her at all times as an extra precaution. For his part, he'd test Jincho's prototype, but he'd also make sure to instruct Clara through the whole operation. It wouldn't be much, probably less than an hour, but the princess didn't care. I may not have your strange, iconic implant, but I can almost feel how excited you are, Clara, he thought, amused. What? I couldn't read that right. Are you enjoying watching me struggle to contain my excitement, Wyatt? Clara asked through their private comlink. Only partially, Wyatt confessed. I can't imagine myself using that iconic... Psionic, Clara corrected gently. Psionic implant of yours, the black-haired man finished as they neared the hangar. It is quite useful if taxing, Clara replied, finishing with a happy giggle. Wyatt, thank you for doing this. As a princess, even the idea of using a training chamber is not something I can simply do without repercussions. Royalty must forever maintain our reputation, standing, and the carefully crafted visage that everyone sees in us. There are certain liberties, but each comes with a dozen conditions and restrictions that are troublesome to curtail. You're my friend, Clara. I'll always help you and Cynthia as much as I can, he chuckled. If I were in your position, I'd try everything in my power to fly in the inky black. I may not like fighters as much as you do, but I love piloting. I lose nothing by giving you a little of that experience firsthand if I can. Clara laughed, involuntarily reaching for her mouth to cover it despite being hidden under the helmet that hid her identity. You speak as if this is to become a regular occurrence, my dear Wyatt. How about occasional? Wyatt countered, slightly turning to glance up at her. It is a comfortable dream, Clara replied simply. Wyatt narrowed his eyes slightly, barely detecting the pain and defeat in her voice. He said nothing, thought nothing, but he made sure to remember it. They arrived at the hangar moments later, where they found Jincho's prototype and a regular Raptor fighter ready for deployment. With Clara at his side, they inspected and walked around Jincho's prototype with their own eyes for the first time. At first glance, it wasn't that different from a regular Raptor, except it was slightly larger, bulkier too. It had less smooth edges, broader wings, and was thicker near the rear where the reactor was located. But their trained eyes noticed further than the initial differences. The wings carried dummy missiles, 4 as always, but instead of 2 coil guns, they found 3. The armor was polished and blended nicely, as if trying to imitate the aesthetic exterior of the Noir Navio. Ah, Lieutenant Commodore. Greetings. Both Wyatt and Clara turned to face Lupin Lusanto, followed by 3 assistants, his red eyes set upon the prototype with a mix of mild admiration, jealousy, and disgust. Technician-in-Chief, Wyatt replied, politely bowing his head. Lupin raised his left palm. Please, Lieutenant Commodore, no need for you to bow your head, he said, his gaze shifting to Clara. That one, however, is she a commoner? She is, Wyatt confirmed without hesitation. There won't be a problem, I presume? Oh, certainly not, Lieutenant Commodore. I am merely observing that this commoner seems to lack even the most basic decency to greet her superiors, remarked Lupin with unveiled contempt. I'll correct her attitude in private. You need not worry, Technician-in-Chief, Wyatt replied, his voice neutral and expression stoic under his helmet. Are our fighters ready? They are, Lieutenant Commodore. This prototype has passed all regular diagnostic tests and system checks. Its shields are 50% stronger than a regular Raptor's, and its 3 coil guns are functional. Several subsystems were altered, rerouted, or removed entirely to accommodate the expanded ammunition bays. The Akanti somehow managed to upgrade and improve the fusion reactor at the cost of making it slightly larger. Despite the additional bulk and tonnage, this prototype has an acceleration force 15% greater than a standard Raptor without engaging the afterburner propulsor, which in turn is more efficient and lasts twice as long. He paused for a moment, walking closer to the fighter. Putting a hand on its hull, he continued. It also possesses a 10% greater deceleration and rotation speed, significantly increasing its maneuverability. The internal dampeners have been upgraded to withstand the increased strain threshold. The onboard AI has also been slightly improved to diminish response time lag. Every other parameter and armament remain at the same level as a standard Raptor. It is an ugly, uneven, crude thing, in my opinion, but one may yield interesting results. It is but a prototype. An impressive one, Wyatt pointed out, unable to hide his desire to climb into the cockpit and run the needed tests. Then you and your companion may leave whenever you wish. I desire nothing but fortune in your endeavors, Lieutenant Commodore, said Lupin, barely bowing his head. Then he left to carry out another unknown task. What an unpleasant man, Clara said once he was gone. He's a blue blood, Wyatt replied, providing no further explanation. Will you be okay climbing into the cockpit yourself? It can't be that difficult. I just need to climb the stairs. I'm a princess, not a helpless moron, Wyatt, Clara replied in good humor. Then let's go, Your Majesty, Wyatt prodded. The blonde laughed. Shush you! Wyatt smiled, watching his friend turn around, barely resisting the urge to run for her fighter and go out into the black. It was an earnest desire he could understand very well. He waited until she was inside her cockpit and it sealed around her. Then he climbed into the cockpit, finding it was nearly identical except for a larger tactical display, a much more comfortable seat, and slightly more space to move. I'll leave first. Follow me 10 seconds later, he ordered and chuckled. I'm giving orders to a princess, a royal noble. Mr. Warlow would either have a heart attack or laugh until he had one if he saw me now, he thought with a broad, toothy smile. Making sure everything was within acceptable parameters, he disengaged the security locks and slowly made his way out of the hangar, passing through the kinetic shield. A deep, happy sigh escaped his lungs as the screens displayed the empty blackness of space. He never understood why he loved space so much, only that he did, and that was more than enough. Moving his contemplation aside, he watched as Clara's fighter flew out of the hangar, following his trail. He couldn't help it. He smiled as he heard Clara's laughter. I'm piloting a fighter. A real Raptor fighter. Cynthia? Cynthia, record everything. It shall join my collection. Don't get ahead of yourself, Clara, Wyatt cut through. Although space was vast, accidents could still occur. Remember, you must pay attention to your sensors, your readings, and everything else simultaneously. You're not going to follow a set path, Clara. You're going to shadow my movements. We'll establish a distance of 5 kilometers between each other, and you'll strive to maintain this distance. We're not in battle, so we'll go in nice and slow, maybe perform an evading maneuver or two once you're comfortable with the controls. Yes, absolutely, yes. Whatever you say, Wyatt, Clara answered, unable to contain her excitement. As Wyatt turned his attention back to running the needed tests, he wondered how far he could push Clara's flying session. She needed to unwind, after all, and nothing was better than speed and quick maneuvers in a fighter to solve that. At least in his experience.